We continue now at the top of Daf Mem Zayin Amud Beis in Meseches Kiddushin. This is Kiddushin Daf 47b. On the previous Amud, Rav said that if a person is Mekadesh, a woman with a milva, with a loan, that is not a good Kiddushin. And the Gemara is in the middle of asking from a Braisa. The Braisa first brought the sheet of the Tanakama. The Tanakama said if a person is Mekadesh, a woman with a milva, even if none of the money is left by her at the time that he says he's forgiving the loan to her, that is still a good Kiddushin. That is unlike Pikadon, where the Tanakama says there has to be at least a pruta of the Pikadon left in her possession when he forgives it to her for it to be a Kiddushin. And then the Braisa continues, and the Braisa says that Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says in the name of Rabbi Meir that a milva harehi ke Pikadon. It's the same thing as a Pikadon, meaning to say that by a milva it's only going to work if she actually has at least a pruta of the money by her. But in any case, the Gemara says it seems to contradict Rav, and that's both opinions in the Braisa go against Rav. Adkan lo pligi ela demar savar milva afagav de lo nishtayir heimena shava pruta, umar savar nishtayir heimena shava pruta in v'ilo nishtayir heimena shava pruta lo. The only machlokas between the Tanakama and Rav Shimon ben Elazar from Rabbi Meir is that one holds that by a loan, even if you don't have a pruta, that's going to be a good Kiddushin, meaning even if there's not a pruta remaining by her, but if he forgives the loan, that's good for a Kiddushin. And the other one says, no, it's like a Pikadon, that's Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar from Rabbi Meir, that if there's a Shava pruta that's remaining by her, then it's a good Kiddushin, and if not, then it's not a good Kiddushin. Avol dekuli alma mekadesh b'milva mekudeshes, but everybody seems to agree in the Braisa that if a person is mekadesh, a woman with a loan, that is a good Kiddushin, and therefore this Braisa is a question on Rav. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rava says, V'tizbra, is it really logical to ask a question from this Braisa? Hamitar Tzasa, is this Braisa really a Braisa that makes sense? Hamishabeshtahi, clearly there is an error in this Braisa, because Hai Pikadon Hechidami, because when the Braisa talks about the case of Pikadon, what exactly is the case? If the case is that the person took responsibility for the Pikadon, meaning to say the person is obligated to pay back the Pikadon should the Pikadon be stolen from them, so Hainu Milva, so that's exactly the same as a loan, that converts to a loan. Essentially, a person takes a Pikadon, then the Pikadon is stolen from them and they're chayiv for it, that should be identical to a loan. And and if the case is that there's no achrayis on the Pikadon, so if so, adatani seifa. So instead of saying at the end of the Braisa of a milva afalpi shalon ishtayir heimena shavapruta mekudeshes, that by a loan, even if you don't have a shavapruta, it's a good kiddushin. Niflog v'nisni b'dida. We should actually just make a distinction within the case itself, meaning within the case of Pikadon itself. And the Braisa should have said as follows: when is this true? Shalo kibla ala achrayis. If the person didn't accept any responsibility on the Pikadon. Avol kibla ala achrayis. But if the person accepted responsibility on the Pikadon, so then it converts into a loan. So then it should have said, Afagav the loan ishtayir heimena shavapruta mekudeshes. Even if you don't have a shavapruta remaining by her, it's still a good kiddushin. In other words, why say that by a loan it's always a good kiddushin, even if there's no shavapruta remaining by her? You could have just said by Pikadon it converts to a loan. By a Pikadon where there's achrayis, that's the same halacha as by a loan. And again, the halacha would be it's a good kiddushin, even if there's no shavapruta remaining by her. And so therefore, clearly there's something wrong with the Braisa. And so the Gemara says, Ella rather taritzachi. Rather, you have to answer the Braisa as follows. You have to read the Braisa in the following fashion. Uvemilva afal pishan ishtayir heimena shavapruta eina mekudeshes. What the Braisa said in the Tanakama was that by a loan, even if there is by her a shavapruta, it is not a good kiddushin, and that is identical to what Rav said. The Tanakama is saying exactly the same as Rav, that by a loan it's not a good kiddushin. Mekadesh b'milva eina mekudeshes. And Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer Mishum Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says in the name of Rabbi Meir, milva harehi pikadon. A milva is the same as a pikadon, and even within this sheet of Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar in the name of Rabbi Meir, it's not that Mekadesh b'milva is always a good kiddushin. It's only going to be a good kiddushin if there's at least a pruta that is still remaining by her at the time that he forgives the loan. And the Gemara says, the Gemara says, well, according to this, what are they arguing about? Amar Rabba says, I found the Rabbanan in the Beis Medrash. They were sitting and they were saying, they're arguing, let's say you have a situation of a loan, and the question is the loan in the Rishus of the Bailam in terms of Chazara? This will all be explained. And also, is the milva in the Rishus of the Bailam in terms of Onsin? That's what they are arguing. Demar Savar, that one holds milve b'rishus love kaima, that the loan is actually in the rishus, it's under the possession of the borrower. V'hu adin la'onsim, and the same thing is true when it comes to onus. If an onus happens, it's in the rishus of the love, it's in the rishus of the borrower, he has responsibility. Umar Savar, and the other one holds milve b'rishus bailam kaima, the loan is actually in the rishus of the original owner. V'hu adin la'onsim, and the same thing is true when it comes to onus. In that situation, the malve is going to be the one who takes responsibility for onus and not the love. Now that's what they answered originally, but that can't be 100% accurate. So va'amina lahu, so I said to them, again this is Rabba talking, Rabba says that he found the Rabbanan in the Beis Medrash and they were saying this explanation, and I said back to them, it can't be exactly like that. La'onsim kuliyama lo pligi. When it comes to an onus, when a person borrows money, certainly the borrower is the one responsible. There can't possibly be a machlokas about onus. The rishus lova kaimi, everybody agrees it is certainly in the rishus of the borrower. A borrower is certainly responsible for any accident that happens. He has to pay back the money. My time, what's the reason? Lo gora mishaela, because it's no worse than borrowing an item to use the item. Mashaela dehadra be'ena chayav ba'onsim. If when it comes to a shoel, when he borrows an item, he's supposed to return that exact same item, and yet we say that a shoel is chayav and an onus is chayav to pay for any accidents that happen to the item. Milva lo kol shekain, by a loan, it certainly should be true that the borrower is responsible to pay for any accidents. Elahacha, rather over here, what's the machlokas? Close to what we said before, but the machlokas in the Bryce is as follows: Milve b'rishus bailam lechazara ika beinayu. They're arguing when you have a loan, is it in the rishus of the original owner in terms of chazara, in terms of returning the item? And again, Rashi will explain. And Rashi explains, Ela al karchach b'dekiblo ale achrayas katani. The Gemara said, rather, you have to say, what are we talking about in the Bryce in terms of pikadon? We're talking about a pikadon where the person took achrayas on the pikadon. He has responsibility. If it gets stolen, he has to pay back. Dim lo nishtayir eina mekudeshes. And of course, if there's nothing remaining by the pikadon, it's not going to be a kiddushin. That's how we're understanding the Bryce, the milvi, because it's the same thing as a loan. V'hamekadesh b'milve eina mekudeshes. And if a person is mekadesh with a loan, it's not a good kiddushin. V'chi nishtayir. Now, if there is something remaining, mekudeshes b'yishir. So then when it comes to pikadon, it is going to be a good kiddushin with that which remains. V'gabe milve taritzachi, and by milve you'll say, afal pishen eshtayir, even if there is something remaining, eina mekudeshes, that's not a good kiddushin, mishum de lahotza nitna, because it's meant to be spent. Again, that is the opinion of the Tanakam in the Brisa. And then Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says from Rabbi Meir, even by milve is the same as pikadon, as long as there is a pruta remaining, it's going to be a good kiddushin. And the Gemara says, b'mai kamiflagi, so what are they arguing about? Now, if they're arguing about whether a loan is meant to be spent, sof ketanoi amra Rav l'shmaite, so then it would be still a machlokas tanoim, because Rav said mekadesh b'milva is not a good kiddushin, because milva lahotza nitna. And if this was a machlokas tanoim in this brisa, whether milva is lahotza nitna, that is a machlokas tanoim within Rav. And so the Gemara said, no, the machlokas tanoim in this brisa, ashkechasinu l'rabbanim b'bei Rav, I found the Rabbanan, this is Rabba talking, I found the Rabbanan in the Beis Medrash. Motzasi ha-talmidim b'beis ha-medrash. Again, I found the talmidim in the Beis ha-medrash. D'chol heicha d'mayri b'bei Rav. And Rashi points out, anytime we talk about Bei Rav in the Gemara, lav Rav mamishu, we're not talking about Rav, meaning the Amora Rav, elo b'beis ha-medrash, we mean to say in the Beis Medrash. And Rashi continues, V'ka'amri, and they were explaining as follows, Liolam lahotza nitna, really, divrei hakol, really everybody agrees that a milva is meant to be spent. V'im sholach bayad lahotzi mimena shava pruta. Now let's say a person would have a pikadon and then he would use it for his own purpose, so then harei hechzik behem, then it's considered like he has taken possession of the pikadon. V'yein habaylim yicholun lachzer, the owners are not able to be choser. V'havalei milva ve'ena mekudeshes, it would convert it into a loan, and it would not be a good kiddushin. V'afilu ruba be'ein, even if still most of it is right in front of us. And over here we're talking in a situation where the person didn't spend anything. And that's why Rav Shimon ben Elazar says Mikudeshes. That's why Rav Shimon ben Elazar says it's a good kiddushin. The point is, according to Rav Shimon ben Elazar, when it comes to a loan, if the loan is entirely in front of us, not any amount of it has been spent, it's actually considered still to be in the rishus of the original owner in terms of chazara. again, there were two versions. Originally, they said it's in the rishus of the original owner, even in terms of onsen. That we say is certainly not true. Certainly, the lov is responsible for onsen. But in terms of chazara, if nothing has been touched from the milva, so then it's in the rishus of the original owner. Let's say the lender says, I want to retract, I don't want to lend the money, I want it back. He's able to retract, he can get the money back since nothing has been touched. Hilkach, therefore, hashtahu do you have an ahile? If at that moment, before anything has been spent, if at that moment he's saying, I'm forgiving the loan and we're making it a kiddushin, he's giving it to her, he's giving it at that moment. V'hu adin la'onsin kaimanami b'reshusei, and the same thing is true when it comes to onus. It's also in his reshus, the misanse potter halova, that if there's an onus, the lova is potter, and again, that part was revised. Rabbah said that's not true. When it comes to an onus, certainly the lova is responsible, but again, when it comes to chazara, if nothing has been touched, according to Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar from Rabbi Meir, that's considered still in the reshus of the original owners. That's why, and that's what Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar is saying from Rabbi Meir, that it's possible by a milva, if it hasn't yet been spent, it's possible that it can be a kedushin. But the Gemara continues, but what about that which Rav Huna said? Hashoel kurdo mechaver, if somebody borrows an axe from his friend, bika bo kano, so if he chops with it, so then he acquires the axe, the lender can't retract and say, I want it back. Rather, the borrower is allowed to continue using it for the allotted time. Lo bika bo, but if he did not chop with it, lo kano, so then he has not acquired it, and then the lender is able to retract. So we see over here from Rav Huna that if he hasn't used it yet, the lender is able to retract. And when it came to a loan of money, when it came to a milva, that was a machlokas tanoim. If it hasn't been spent, whether retraction is possible. So leima ketanoy amar l'shmaite, should we suggest that what Rav Huna said is actually a machlokas tanoim? And the Gemara says, lo, no, not necessarily. There's a difference between a milva and a she'ela. Adkan lo pligi ela b'milva. The whole machlokas tanoim is only by a milva, by a loan, to lo hadra be'ena, because that's not something that you have to return the original money. You just owe the amount of money by a loan. Aval b'she'ela, but when it comes to she'ela, when a person is borrowing an item, to hadra be'ena, where the actual item has to be returned, so there it could be everybody agrees that retraction is possible if it hasn't been used. Divrei hakol, everybody agrees, bika bo in, if he chopped with it, yes, then there is an acquisition. Lo bika bo, lo kano, but if he didn't chop with it yet, it has not yet been acquired, and therefore everybody agrees in that situation, retraction is possible. And the Gemara continues, Neimen ketanoi, let us say it's a machlokas tanoi, meaning that which Rav said, that hamakadesh b'milva, if a man is makadesh a woman with a loan, it's not a good kiddushin. Let us suggest that it's a machlokas tanoi. The Brisa says, Hiskadshi li b'shtar chov, let's say a man says to a woman, be mekudeshes to me with this shtar chov. The shtar chov is meant to collect the debt, and he's giving her the power to collect the debt. O shahaylo milva bi'ad acherim v'hir shaleim, or let's say he has a loan in the hands of others, meaning he's owed money by someone else, and again he allows her to collect that money. He's using that as kiddushin. Rabbi Meir omer mekudeshes, v'chachamim omer meina mekudeshes. Rabbi Meir says it's a good kiddushin, and the chachamim say it's not a good kiddushin. And the Gemara says, Hai shtar chov hechi dami. What exactly is the first case of iskad shili b'shtar chov? What is the case in that situation? Ilema shtar chov de'acherim. If you're going to say that he's giving her a shtar chov of others, meaning he has a shtar, he was supposed to use that shtar to collect from someone else. Now he's giving that shtar to her. She's able to collect from someone else. So the only problem with saying that is hainu milva bi'ad acherim. That's identical to the next case of a milva bi'ad acherim. He's giving her the power to collect from that other individual. That would be the same case twice. Elalav, rather is it not? Shtar chov dida, the case over here is, the shtar chov is actually her shtar chov, meaning he was supposed to collect from her money, and he's forgiving the loan. It's identical to Rav's case. He's forgiving a loan for the purposes of Kiddushin. Over Mekadesh b'milva kamiflgi, and that's exactly what they're arguing about over here. There's a machlokas tanoim. What happens by Mekadesh b'milva? Is it a good Kiddushin or not? And the Gemara says, no, liolam shtar chov da'acherim. Really, this has nothing to do with Rav's case. This is a shtar chov that he has against other people. He's giving it to her. V'hacha b'milva b'shtar over milva al peka miflagi. And actually, what's happening over here is there are two separate cases in this brisa. They're arguing about when he gives her a milva with a document. He gives her the document, and then they're also arguing about, let's say it's a milva al peh. He has a loan that he was supposed to collect. He didn't have any document. It was just something that they agreed to the terms verbally, and then he gives her the ability to collect. That's also a machlokas tanoim. And the Gemara explains, B'milva b'shtar b'mai pligi. When it comes to a milva b'shtar, what exactly is the machlokas tanoim? What are they arguing about? That Rabbi Meir says it is a good kiddushin, and the Chachamim say it's not a good kiddushin. And the Gemara is going to offer several suggestions. The first suggestion is beplugsa de Rebbe v'Rabbanan. They're arguing about the machlokas Rebbe and the Rabbanan kamiflagi. That's what they're arguing about. The Tanya, because we learned in a brisa, osios niknos b'mesira divrei Rebbe. Letters can be acquired through giving, through transmission. That's the opinion. Those are the words of Rebbe. Meaning to say, if you have a shtar according to Rebbe, all you have to do is give the shtar to somebody else, and then that individual has the ability to collect. The Chachamim say, ben shekasa v'lo moser, whether he wrote it up, but he didn't give over the original document, or ben shemoser v'lo kasav, or let's say he gave over the original document, but he didn't write up an official document of sale saying he's transmitting it to the other party. Lo kan, it's not going to be a kinyan according to the Chachamim, ad sheyichtov v'yimser, until you actually write it up as a separate document that you're transferring the loan, and you have to give over the original document. That's the opinion of the Chachamim. And so that's the machlokas over here. Over here you had a situation where it was only given over to the woman. They didn't do both steps. It wasn't kasav and mosar. And so mar islay de Rebbe, mar leslay de Rebbe. One holds like Rebbe, and one doesn't hold like Rebbe, meaning according to Rabbi Meir holds like Rebbe. It's a good kiddushin, because all you need is mesira. All you need to do is give over the document. And the Chachamim say that's not sufficient. That's why it's not a good kiddushin. And the Gemara gives another suggestion. If you want, I could say the kuli alma less lu the Rebbe. Nobody agrees with Rebbe, meaning everybody agrees that if you would just give it over, certainly that is not going to be a good transmission of the document. And here they're arguing about Rapapa. Here the case is there was a good transmission of the document in terms of writing it up and giving it over. However, Rapapa said, if somebody sells a shtar to his friend, he has to write the following: Kani lahu v'chol shibude. That not only are you acquiring it, you're acquiring all the loans, all the liens rather, that come along with this document. And so over here they didn't write that. They didn't add that you're acquiring it and all the liens. And so therefore again, Maris le Rapapa, one holds like Rapapa that you have to write that, otherwise it's not considered to be good. That's the Chachamim. They say it's not a good kiddushin. Umar les le Rapapa, and Rabbi Meir, he doesn't hold it like Rapapa. Rabbi Meir says it's still considered a good transmission of the document, and that's why Rabbi Meir says Mekudeshes, that it's a good kiddushin. And the Gemara continues with another suggestion. If you want, I could say to Kuli Alma Islu de Rapapa. Everybody agrees with the Rapapa. You have to say Chol Shibude. You have to transmit the liens as well. And here Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim are arguing within what Shmuel said. The Amar Shmuel, because Shmuel said. And Rashi explains, Niknos b'Mesira, again, according to Rebbe, you can just transmit the document, that's enough. You don't have to write a document of sale on the document that's being sold. The moment that shtar is given from the malvit to somebody else, now the borrower has to pay that other person. And the other opinion was Bein Shekasav. This was the opinion of those that argue with Rebbe, the opinion of the Rabbanan. They say no. If you wrote Lo Shtar Mechir Olav V'Lo Maser Lo Shtar Achov, let's say he wrote up a document of sale, but didn't give the original document, the document that was used to collect. Uvein Shemaser Lo Shtar Achov, or let's say the Shtar Chov was given. V'Lo Kasav Lo Shtar Mechir Olav, but they didn't write a document of sale. Lokan, it's not a kinyan. You have to do both according to the Rabbanan. V'Achanami, so you'll say over here also that's the Machlokes Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim. Shemaser Lo Shtar Achov, Afapi Shelo Kasav Lo Shtar Mechir Olav. He gave over the shtar chov to her, but he didn't write a shtar mechira. Man damar mekudeshes islay the Rebbe, the one who says that's a good kiddush, and that's Rabbi Meir, holds like Rebbe that that's considered to be a good transmission of the document. Umar leslay the Rebbe, and the other one does not hold like Rebbe. That's why the Chachamim say it's not a good kiddushin. V'boy same to kuliyam leslu the Rebbe, or you could say everybody does not agree with Rebbe. V'acha b'shamaser v'kasav Mari. Here they actually did give over the document and they wrote up a document of sale. So what's the machlokas? Ela shekasav la kanilach hayshtar. When they wrote up the document of sale, they wrote you should acquire the shtar, but they didn't write all the liens within the shtar, and so that's going to be a machlokas whether that's good. Man damar eina mekudeshes kerapapa, the one that says it's not a good kiddushin, meaning to say the Chachamim they follow Rapapa that that's not a good transmission. Or you could say the Kuli Alma Islu de Rapapa, everybody agrees with the Rapapa. Rabbi Meir Mekudeshes B'Chekasav La V'chulu. Rabbi Meir says it's a good kiddushin because they did write it properly. V'hacha b'Shmuel kamiflagi, and here the machlokus between Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim is within Shmuel, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Memches Amud Aleph.